the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Fair. And This is me kind of, jumping on the one thing you said that was lunacy.
Lunacy.
I do think you make a decent point overall.
Well, now it was a good point like 20 seconds ago. Now it's down to decent. Ryan might be at a point where he's like, that was just I don't know what you're talking about. That was
it was a good point, but it has been docked down to decent for the first words out of your mouth making the comparison being Brian Harsin and Auburn.
Well, it is what it is. Week 4, Tennessee men's basketball is really good here. Number 1 in net, Ryan Schumpert. Top 2 in KenPom here. My question to you, as a college basketball connoisseur, does this feel like the best team in college basketball right now? And who would you take right now, like in a Auburn-Tennessee neutral matchup? How does Tennessee match up against the fellow SEC behemoth in Auburn right now?
I guess it's up to me to be negative again. No, it does not feel like the number 1 team in the country to me. A good team, yes. A really good team, maybe even a fringe top 5 team, I would agree. I do think Auburn just, for once, a bad matchup against Tennessee. I mean, we talked about it last week. We talked about JP Estrella being out. And it was like Auburn's the example of a team where you're going to miss JP Estrella and being able to play big. And I was surprised Tennessee was 1 in net over Auburn, just from the standpoint. I mean, Auburn's got 4 quad 1 wins. So that part, I guess, kind of confused me. I guess it was the nobody teams they've played have been worse because Tennessee's played a lot of quad 3, smaller games at this point in the season. So I would lean Auburn towards there in that matchup. But look, not by a ton. Like, I don't think Auburn's just night and day better than Tennessee. And I think Tennessee is certainly in that top group with a ton of teams. And I'm not sure there's any sort of runaway clear number 1 at this point in the season.
It just feels like they know who they are. And it's kind of like their ceiling's really high. And I was texting with the Tom Schilling group chat about this, where I'm like, I think Tennessee's ceiling's higher than it was a year ago. But I think their floor is way lower because they're just so thin. Like, when you go into this lower scholarship type of year, you don't fill those. You lose 2 guys to injury, one for over a month, 1 for the season. Like, it's dangerous. Like, if you can remain pretty healthy the rest of the way, you'll be okay and you can get to where you want to go. Felix Okpara injury, I don't know what this team looks like. It can get dicey in a hurry in SEC play if you don't have Okpara for an extended period of time or anything. Obviously, ZZ is the most important and the engine that keeps this thing going. But they're deep in a way that, like, their rotation, their 8 to 9 guys, are really, really strong. And they're all really good players. And it's the nice mixture between stars and role players, and they all have kind of different skills. And ZZ is just the engine that makes this all work. But I do think they're playing with fire a little bit. And it's just kind of Tennessee. If you're a fan, it kind of reminds me, in the NBA, as a big NBA guy here, Ryan Schumpert, is a team that goes, it's kind of like a Daryl Morey team to me, where for my NBA hoop heads, where they traded a bunch of assets, and now you've got the stars, like the ceiling's high, but you don't have depth. You don't get to have depth and also a really high ceiling in the NBA. It's really hard to have both. So you kind of have to you get at a crossroads at a certain point where you're like, all right, like, do we value our 10 to 11 man rotation, or do we trade 3 to 4 guys to bring in a bigger star? For Tennessee, they were like, well, we went all in. We got Chaz Lanier to replace the Dalton Connect production. We like the guys that we're bringing back, and we don't feel like we need to fill out the roster with just anybody. The rest of the way, we can be down a couple scholarships. And look, if we remain healthy, we can be better than we were a year ago. But if we're not, like, that's the kind of price you pay when year to year in this thing. So I just think it's a kind of gamble. It's a high upside, high risk, high reward gamble that I still just think that there's no way around it. Like, that's just going to be the case week in, week out for fans. It's like, I think they can win it. I think they can go to the Final Four this year. I also think that this season can unravel in a hurry, depending on one or 2 max injuries.
See, I understand what you're saying, but where I disagree is you can't play this game when they've already lost 2 guys.
Yeah.
You can't play they don't have enough depth. They're an injury or 2 away from being in trouble.
I said this before.
They've already have 2 guys injured. Yeah, but they already have 2 guys injured, and they're fine right now. They have enough depth.
Like I said, it's on Okpara, It's
But that's my point. You can't say you're down 2 guys, you're down one of your centers, and if you lose your other center, you're in trouble. Yeah, no crap. Who else in the country can lose their top 2 centers and it not be a significant drop off? Like that's where I just disagree with the logic of it. Like, sure, all that's right. And I think what you said that I completely agree with is this team knows who it is. Like, I think for to be this point in the year and the amount of transfers they brought in, and for all the roles to be this defined, not only for the key players, but even the bench guys. Like, it feels like Jordan Gainey knows who he is coming off the bench. It feels like Cade Phillips really knows who he is and what he does for this team coming off the bench. I think the only one you would say you're less sure on to some degree is D-Stone, and that's largely because he's was out of the fray for a couple of weeks. So I completely agree with that element. I see what you're saying with the depth, but the fact that they're down 2 guys right now, and you're like, to me, the bigs, it's not fair. Because if you lose Felix, you lose your first 2 bigs. If they lose Zakai, that's where I think it's completely fair to be critical, because they haven't recruited a backup point guard other than, a true freshman in Bishop Boswell, who high on and what he can be for Tennessee going forward.
But he's not Kennedy Chandler. He's not someone who's stepping in and you're like, just not happening.
Yeah, he's exactly like that. I don't mean that's not supposed to be any sort of knock at Bishop or anything, but he's not a guy that's going to step in and it's just going to be seamless without him. So if Tennessee loses to
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.